Hello, everyone. We are going to get started in just a second. If you are here, please say hello. I am going to share my screen. Sorry if you hear the lawnmowers. I cannot escape the lawnmowers. It's so crazy. Okay. No matter what I'm doing, the lawnmowers are going in my neighborhood. Okay, so let us get started today. We are going to talk about healing trauma without exploring painful memories. This is a hot topic here, I know, because we had a good number of registrants for this training specifically. So if you are here or if you're just getting here, this is being streamed in a couple of places. So feel free to say hello in the chat, in the comments, wherever you're seeing this. Let me know where you are tuning in from. And we are going to hop into it. First, I want to give you a disclaimer. It is within my scope of practice as a certified trauma support specialist and a certified forward-facing coach. So I can educate you, right? I am not a licensed therapist. I am not a doctor. I am a coach. So this is for educational purposes only. You are a sovereign being, so I want you to always make the best choice for yourself. So my name is Michelle Holmes. If you know me, welcome back. If I'm brand new to you, welcome for the first time. I do weekly trainings, weekly except for 1 week out of the month, because I take 1 week off from doing training, coaching, the whole thing. That's how I have some time to myself to do some other business things. But anyways, so these weekly trainings, they happen 3 to 4 times a month, and I am really happy to provide some like bridging of the gaps to you. So that's what I do. I'm a transformational coach, author, speaker, consultant, and podcast host of the Flourish podcast. I am a dog mom, a stepmom, a wife, a recovering workaholic, and I am currently mastering the 5-hour workday. So very excited about that. A 5-hour workday. Yes, it's happening. Check back in with me next week and I will tell you how it is going. These are some of the companies that I have worked with in the last about year. So what I do is I help high achievers unlock the wisdom of their nervous system. Foreshadowing, right? So they can improve performance, create the impact they desire, and put an end to burnout, anxiety, and self-sacrifice. So I approach my work through a trauma-informed lens. And for many of the topics that I talk about, that right there is what makes me different than a lot of the other things that you hear, a lot of the other coaches. So that's the lens that I see my work through. So like I said, this is a really popular topic, and for very good reason. People need help right now in these in this avenue about healing from trauma. We have a lot of people that are looking for resources and things. So judging by the excitement with this in particular topic, I'm looking forward to kind of connecting the dots here and continuing the conversation. So my goal for this, I don't think we're going to go a full hour. I'll have to keep a watch on my clock over here. But I do think that this may give you some questions. And so I want to hear what your questions are. Probably not today. I have to run out of here pretty quickly after this, but absolutely be able to come back to what your questions are. So please, as we're going along, feel free to put them in the chat or in the comments or send me a private message. So you might be wondering, because you are here, how is it possible to heal trauma without trudging through it all? Even that word, trudging through it all, without exploring the painful memories. How is that possible? So I'm going to talk to you about a few different things here. And I think you might have your mind opened up a little bit. So first, I want to start with Michelle, me, from 8 years ago, okay? So part of my story is that I absolutely had debilitating symptoms, both health-wise and mental health-wise, like physical health-wise and OCD and generalized anxiety, and daily symptoms from post-traumatic stress. So these different things: panic disorder, adrenal fatigue. You may also know that as pretty severe burnout, leaky gut, all this stuff that's not very fun. So that's my experience. And if you would have told me a while ago that I was able to heal without doing a lot of the hard exploring and seeking and trying to find, things would have been a lot different for me. Like I present the stuff that I wish that I had. So maybe you can resonate. Many of the people I work with do resonate with this. But for me, at that time, especially, and even just a handful of years ago, I thought that healing trauma was basically like this mystery that I needed to go find the hidden door, and I would just be able to walk in and have it all figured out. It was like it was behind this hidden door, and that I could never find the door. I didn't know where to look. I didn't even know, like, what do you Google? Exactly. I just felt like I could never find the right information. And when I did find information, it just led me to somewhere else. And then there was more. So I didn't love that, and I felt kind of powerless. Let me know if you can resonate with that right there. I also found it really hard to make progress on healing trauma in whatever way that I could, because I couldn't access my memory. I didn't have memory of trauma in very significant ways. Like I have said this before, but I really don't have much memory at all of my childhood. And that was always really, really confusing to me. And that's a story for a different day. I'd be happy to talk more about that. But many people resonate with not having the memory and not being able to put language to the trauma that they've experienced. And that makes a lot of sense from the perspective that I approach this through, which is definitely that you can't put language to it because your whole brain, the prefrontal cortex, that was offline, so you're processing it through this body feeling, not through this cognitive, like easy to put into words kind of thing, which what we know about how trauma actually works in the body and the brain, that checks out, right? So we know it from how we feel, and the feelings and the sensations and the physiological effects. But in terms of all the cognition and the fancy words that we want to describe and really go into it, we don't have that. So I didn't have that. You may not also have that. And I thought that if I just spent years and years in therapy, then I would magically uncover it. the key to healing, how to move on, how to not have symptoms. But surprise, this never happened. So unfortunately, that wasn't like my light bulb moment. I didn't just magically come upon the thing that made all the difference for me after trudging through it all. It wasn't like, oh, you're done. That's not how it works. So I want to talk about some misconceptions, because I certainly had some misconceptions with this, and also some setbacks here. So when I was doing some research for this training here, I went to the American Psychological Association's Dictionary of Psychology, and I looked up what they call catharsis and how they describe that. So catharsis, they say it is, in psychoanalytic theory, the discharge of previously repressed effects connected to traumatic events that occurs when these events are brought back into consciousness and re-experienced. Okay, so re-experienced. They also say, more generally, the release of strong pent-up emotions. They also say, see abreaction here, so I included that as well. From the same dictionary. So abreaction is the therapeutic process of bringing forgotten or inhibited material, like experiences or memories, from the unconscious into consciousness, with concurrent emotional release and discharge of tension and anxiety. See also catharsis. So these are closely related here. And this is what I have been seeing recently. So in some advertising lately, and in some of the talk about trauma, what I have seen is quite interesting to me. So I'll tell you, I saw an ad the other day on Facebook, and I couldn't help myself. I had to comment on it, and I said, this is not the only way, just so everybody knows here, because this way looks really scary. So the ad was this group of people, they were like laying down, they were doing a very, very intense emotional release, like huge emotions. And that is sometimes what we think has to happen. And it gets a lot of attention because it's like this big thing. There is a lot of emotion there. There's anger and rage and sadness and fear. And it was basically like the ad. I'm surprised they're like running the ad, and I guess maybe they're getting good results. But the ad was people that were putting their hands and like holding each other down. Like it looked like there was like a practitioner and like a client, and so they were having this huge emotional reaction, and like the camera would just like pan to these clips of the practitioner like holding down in different areas. So it was clear they were doing some sort of emotional kind of like process there. Okay, so make it big, right? That gets a lot of press if we make it big, and we have this huge reaction. But this is not it's not the only way. It's not only that it's not the only way, but it's not even effective. There's a reason that this isn't the gold standard of trauma treatment. So I also saw this article here, and I am going to link this in the show notes, so you'll have the link to it. You can just see that in the description of wherever you're seeing this. So Theravive, that's a website, and Theravive's website is all about connecting counselors and psychologists, mental health practitioners, something like that, to patients and clients. And so they have content around this, and this article came up for me when I was looking into this. So we're not going to read this whole thing, but I did underline a few things here. So abreaction therapy focuses on reliving a traumatic event. And abreaction counselors use catharsis or the cleansing of emotions, because catharsis is Latin for cleansing. So cleansing of emotions to get rid of the spirit and thoughts associated with the experience. I just found that a little bit kind of interesting. Get rid of the spirit and thoughts associated with the experience. Now, I will say this is just an article, so who knows who wrote this and who knows how this but it's on their website, okay? So I will say that. I don't mean to throw them under the bus, but they could take this off of their website if they wanted. So the goals of abreaction therapy is when a client has completed their treatment, they should be able to speak openly about the event without feeling uncomfortable or unable to cope. Okay, that's a fine goal. The thing is, that's not the only way to get there, which we can talk about. But I also, as a traditional and direct form of therapy, this is an awareness tool that helps clear up the conscious tension, which can be extremely dramatic when it is associated with heavy emotions or painful memories. This is actually like quite a good, it's a good thing for us to be aware of, and it's a good thing for us to kind of use this in what we're going to talk about later. Okay, so when is it used? It's they say it's implemented when a client is in need of an emotional and spiritual breakdown. And they also say that it is likely that the patient will also undergo disorientation toward the beginning of treatment. And the counselor has to be careful when they are reliving the event, being that it often promotes flashbacks as unavoidable when it comes to working with trauma. So please raise your hand. Do you want to relive trauma? Let me know if that's something that you desire to do. Because when I talk to people, and myself included, no one has ever said, oh, I really wish I could just do that over again, like for fun. Like, I really wish that I could go and re-experience that. No, they are trying to get so far away from it. Absolutely not. They're reliving it. Like, who wants to go forth and try to re-experience it? And when we talk about trudging through painful memories, we are re-experiencing it. So raise your hand if you want flashbacks. Flashbacks were huge for me. That was one of my primary daily symptoms, was having flashbacks multiple times a day of a traumatic event that had happened to me. And it was like I could not escape them. So if you would have asked, Michelle, do you want to continue experiencing flashbacks? No, thank you. Absolutely not. Because when I experience a flashback, my body is back in the event. That's what it feels like. It's playing in my mind. I can see it. I don't want to do that. That's me going back and reliving in it and going through it again. And also raise your hand if you need a breakdown. What they said here about an emotional and spiritual breakdown. When a client is in need of an emotional and spiritual breakdown, I don't know a single person who I think needs to have a breakdown. Absolutely not. So, like I said before, catharsis, abreaction, those are two fancy terms, but you're going back, you're trudging through, you're bringing it up. I said it's like you make it big, but when we know better, we do better. Okay? At least now the trauma community is very well aware that that doesn't work. And even that article says that it is no longer like no longer a standalone therapy. Okay, it's part of the people who are still using it, are using it in combination in a more integrative approach. So I also want to mention here, we can go forward, and here I'll stop sharing for a second here. We can move forward, and any trauma healing that we are doing and things that we are trying to improve, it's possible that we can have these abreactions, and we may feel like we really are we may have a flashback, we may have a nightmare, we may have discomfort. There's a difference between that kind of being like a side effect per se, or like something like not a benefit, but a con, so to speak, of moving forward in the healing process. But there's a really big difference between that as like along the journey versus let's dive head first and that's what we're going to do. So that's going to be the approach, right? And what we know now in how do you heal trauma, the same skills that we use to heal the trauma is actually what we can do when someone does have the reaction of, well, what do I do when I'm in a flashback? Or what if this comes to the surface and this pain and I'm suddenly aware of it? We can use the same skills, but that doesn't mean we can use the same skills, let me clarify, to come back into like a stable body and mental state, right? We don't want you to go through distress. And so we're doing everything that we can to support this feeling of safety, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But that's even what we can do in terms of going through that and making it smoother and making it less uncomfortable to experience, less scary. Flashbacks are really scary, and abreactions, and when that starts coming and we're like reliving it, that can feel so overwhelming. So here, I'll start sharing again. Okay, so telling the story is not helpful. So going back, thinking about, well, what do I think off the top of my head I need to do to heal from trauma? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's uncover the event as best I can. Sometimes that can actually do more harm than good. And when we talk about what has happened to us, when we're back in that state, it actually can be re-traumatizing to us. And we know this is very well known, but this is also what people report to me. And they say, I did this with a therapist, or I did this with somebody, and it took days for me to recover from it. It was not a good experience. It felt really icky. I didn't like it. I don't want to go back there. And the reason that this feels so like icky to us, the reason that it is re-traumatizing is it doesn't just add additional memory of the trauma, because when we're talking about it with someone, we're adding more to it. We're adding more to the memory. We're talking about it again. But it also creates further dysregulation in your system. And that's a really important thing for you to know, because you're starting to connect the dots between what's going on inside you in relation to what you have been through. So I think that right now is a really good time for us to talk about what is trauma, and have some clarity here. So trauma is not the event. Sometimes we think that it's just the event. Oh, that was trauma. But what's traumatizing to you may not be traumatizing to me. It's not exclusive to an event. It's what happens inside you. Okay? So it's how you respond, react to the event, the resources you had, the internal capacity, all of that. What is going on in your system? So I like to think of it as your body, your brain, and your spirit. So when we talk about trauma, we have big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma we think about as there's when we hear things on the news that are incredibly traumatic. It's like people identify that as trauma very easily. When we have smaller, like small t trauma, that doesn't mean that the effect that these traumas have had on us is less. It just means that the small t trauma is things like divorce or a breakup, or loss of a pet, or a humiliating experience or a frightening experience that you've had. So there's physiology wise, there's no difference in how we experience it, because it's not the event, it's our reaction to that. So our memory of trauma is actually a charged reaction. So I like to include this graphic here. I assembled a couple graphics to make my point here, but we have over here, we have a filing cabinet. And this is typically what we would think of when we have like memories. We have them filed away. They're compartmentalized, they're tidy, they're neat, they are filed, they are organized. This is great. Typically, this happens during sleeping time. Our brain is filing everything. Well, with trauma, that's not what happens. So my therapist from years ago actually explained it to me like this, where she said, trauma is it's like a pool, like this pool of water, and we don't file it. It's just this pool of water, and it's there. And I like to say we have this lightning strike, and so there's a lot of energy here. And when lightning strikes the pool, it's like everything gets electrocuted in the pool, in the water. If you're touching the water, you're getting zapped. So if we go back here, our memory of trauma is that charged reaction. And so how do you think that we experience that reaction? It's in our present. So it's not in our past anymore. It's actually brought with us all the way to our present moment. So it's messy, it's unorganized, it's untouchable in many ways. We are not doing much with it, and it's here with us. So what we experience in the trauma is actually nervous system dysregulation. So I told you earlier, as a bit of foreshadowing, I think I said that that I help people unlock the wisdom of their nervous system. And so that's really the system that we have where we are working with healing from trauma. So nervous system dysregulation, if this is new to you, which I have a whole presentation on the nervous system, reach out to me if you need it, or if you would like to kind of take a gander in there, because it's a pretty good overview. But if you're new to this, nervous system dysregulation can show up as anxiety, depression, dissociation, panic attacks, impulsivity, rushing, being really fast all the time, like you got to get everything done, like this pressure, angry outbursts, losing your cool, having difficulty relaxing. This is huge for the people that I work with. Feeling on edge or feeling hypervigilant, overwhelm, even a fast heartbeat, sleep issues, stonewalling. This means that a good example, if you don't know what stonewalling is like you're in a fight and your partner gives you the silent treatment. They are stonewalling. They are unable to express themselves. They are overcome with emotion. I used to be like this. It took me a lot to figure out how to move through that, because my emotions felt really, really big, and they do, and stomach pain as well. So this is dysregulation, and this dysregulation is how we know we have trauma. We've been through trauma. We've been traumatized in some fashion. Okay, because like I said, we can't just check a list and say, oh, Michelle went through this one event over here, that was trauma. No, that's not how it works. It's our system, our response, our reaction, not only our reaction, because I want to clarify, it's not that you chose to react in a certain way. It is that your system was so overwhelmed that there was no other choice. So you had cortisol release and adrenaline and a cocktail of stress hormones that overwhelmed your system, and that basically the trauma just got like encapsulated right there, where it was like, okay, this is not going anywhere. And that's how it got stored. So there is nothing that you could have done to save yourself from having that reaction as you went through it. That's in the past. And we cannot change the past. So we can't change the past and what we've been through, but the flip side of that coin is that we're not in the past anymore. We're in the present, and trauma is actually experienced through the present. So it's like, okay, if we saw a tiger walking in the woods after us, here we are at school, and we still kind of, our defenses are up. We're looking over our shoulder. Our trauma response is in the present. We feel it in our system now. So our nervous system is constantly on the lookout for danger. That's its primary goal, is to keep us safe, alive, free from tigers and bears and all of that. So there's some power in that, because that is what we can use on our way to healing. So when trauma comes up in our daily life, it's really important for you to know, when we're experiencing this in the present, we're having a full system experience, but the parts of the brain that handle logic and reasoning actually go offline. So this can create some problems for us, right? We see this in individuals who are having a trauma response. They feel like they can't think clearly. They can't properly tell you all about it. Their system is kind of overwhelmed. and those parts of the brain are offline. So when we think about different approaches to healing trauma, there's what's called a top-down versus a bottom-up approach. And if we know that parts of the brain go offline when we're in that trauma response, when our system is activated, then top-down doesn't really work as well. That's not to say that we don't need our brain. We absolutely need our brain. We need our prefrontal cortex. We need the thinking and the logic and the reasoning. But with a top-down approach, we're saying, okay, let's have that first. Let's think about it. And then let's make sure that we can see our surroundings, and we're going to say we're safe. We're not in that trauma situation anymore. So our brain is going to tell us, and then it's going to calm us down. But we've already seen the problem in this. We need the brain, but the brain's offline. So with the bottom-up approach, it's saying, listen, we know the brain is offline. So let's work on that later. Let's first get our body in the state that we need it to be, the regulated, calm, cool, collected, right? That's not to say that we're that everything's hunky-dory, but we are in this state where we are able to be very regulated. And when we're back in that regulated body, then we're able to get our brain online again. And then we can say, oh yeah, I wasn't in danger there. It just felt like I was in danger. But we have our body to cue our brain. Okay, so the healing is absolutely needing both components, but the order actually makes a difference. So, like I said, when our body is regulated, we are able to get the cognitive parts of the brain back online. And that's a really good thing for us to have our cognition back, because then we can put language to it. We can reason. We can also be intentional. That's a huge one. We can determine how we want to act in this situation, even when 5 minutes before, 5 seconds before, however long it takes you to get back in this regulated body. Prior to being regulated, you were in a threat response. You were overwhelmed with this trauma and this painful past learning. So your threat response was completely activated. And so to convince ourselves that we have nothing to be threatened by, we need to feel that first. So when we can do that, when we are able to work with the nervous system first, and we, like I said, we're constantly, we're unlocking the wisdom of our nervous system, because we're taking those cues and we're seeing, well, what painful learning do I have around this? Where does the pain from this trauma live? How does it show itself? What are the triggers that are coming up for me? What are the messengers? We begin to see clearly. It's like we're putting our glasses on. We can see clearly. We have a regulated body. And that is where we can begin to unpack a lot of the narrative around the trauma, which is also very important for our healing. So our healing is so very powerful when we can have and create that safety within ourselves, our body, where we reside. This feeling is the key, extremely important for us to resolve the trauma. For us, this means healing, creating a new level of safety for ourselves, so we're not constantly being brought back to the past. And to actually work with your nervous system, you don't even have to go down memory lane of what has happened. You don't have to, like I said, trudge through the traumatic events and experiences. As a coach with my clients, it's very rare. Sometimes I will, but it's very rare for my clients to say, oh, this thing happened. Like, I hear little bits and pieces that they are bringing to the session because it's very meaningful to what they're experiencing in the present, but we're never saying, let's go down memory lane and talk about all these things and you have to rehash it, and then we're going to find the healing on the other side after you have rehashed it. So we're creating that safety, and that internal safety is then allowing transformation and healing to occur. So our nervous system's job is to keep us safe. That is how it functions. So when we can show it that we actually are safe, we're not experiencing trauma, when we're like in a flashback, or think about when you wake up from a nightmare, you feel like you are unsafe. You feel scared. You feel fear. You feel overwhelmed. And so our system is constantly feeling that when we have these trauma responses. And we can certainly talk about this more if you need some clarity around that, but it's how our system is perceiving things, our experience. And so it's really important that we learn how to work with that so that we can stop seeing danger when we're not in danger. Because if you're watching this right now, it's very unlikely that you're in any sort of danger, but your system may not know that right now. You may be feeling a level of anxiety or depression or these other things that are a really big deal, but are for you, it's your system reacting appropriately to what your system sees in your experience based on your past, your perception of what's coming at you, the threats that are in life, that you're being kind of surrounded by and constantly reminded of. That's all linked to the stuff that you've been through and the dysregulation that you feel in your system as well. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there, where you have multiple things going on that are causing you to feel really dysregulated. So we are healing the past pain through the present. I like this picture here because it's like, okay, everything from the past is like these dominoes, and then we come in and we're able to finally stop the dominoes from just continuing on, demolishing all, falling over from now until it reaches all the way to the end. We're able to stop it. And that's really what we do when we're able to use our nervous system for our own good and for our own healing. So we have the power to grow. We have the power absolutely to cultivate change within ourselves. We can heal. We are not broken. What we have gone through is terrible sometimes, but we are able to stop the pain from disrupting and really hurting us in the present and in the future. I would love to know, what will you take action on today? Do you have any takeaways? Do you have anything that you are able to actually implement, knowing what you know now that you didn't know before? Please put them in the chat or in the comments, wherever you're seeing this. And if you do need further support, you want to go deeper on this, maybe you've connected some of the dots in your own life, but you don't know the full connection and what this means and how to actually implement nervous system regulation and build your skills and put this into a process. I have a process. So I'm a certified forward-facing coach and certified trauma support specialist. I did not develop my process. I am standing on the shoulders of giants here with decades of research in this. And so we go through a process, and I'm happy to talk to you more about what that could look like for you. I have 2 spots open, and it's by application only. So the application will show me and answer some questions as to whether or not this would get some this would be a win for you in my program. I do like to have a conversation as well, because there's some questions that I have for you that I need answered before we move forward, to make sure that this can help you and also get your questions answered, because everyone is different in what their experience is, but there are many similarities across the board. The people that I work with, some of them have very high levels of anxiety. Some of them might be feeling rather burnt out or more dissociated. Like I said, they may not have memories of different things. They don't know the full picture of how trauma has affected them, but they know that it has. Because they do have some of those dysregulation symptoms that we saw. Their relationships are impacted. They're going down a thought spiral, and they have these things where they just can't seem to break through it in the way that they really want to. So I'm happy to chat with you if you're looking for support and you need some clarification there. Happy to tell you more about the process and what that looks like. Reach out to me, and I am here if you have any additional questions. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.